Hi, Robin. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Andy?
Doing good. All righty. So today, are we going to work a little bit more on those THs?
Perfect.
Awesome. Let's do it. All righty. So,
And a little of the rounding, like I feel like I'm
yeah,
keeping my mouth super small as opposed to
sure.
allowing it to. Perfect.
To open up and round that shape. So, what are some of these sounds that we need to round on? So when you
For
think of
example,
round,
like how,
mm-hmm.
like my lips, I've noticed over the weekend, like a couple times when I'm like so lazy and my mouth is super small, and literally like a couple people asked me to repeat what I said.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So words like wonder, right? When we have a W, when we have the oo, when we have O, the Q, the R sometimes, they
yeah.
can sometimes need a little bit more rounding, but if we narrow too much, we're going to run into issues where it sounds muted or mumbled, right? So then that can be a little bit tricky. So when we think of opening up in the mouth, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the front of the mouth. The front could be a little bit smaller, but inside you can open up more as well. So, on those rounded sounds, I want you to think about inside the mouth, having it feel a little more open. So, the back of the mouth, opening that more like a big cave inside. So, think of that being more open and rounded. And one little trick you might try today is think of the back palate space. So in the back of your mouth, between your molars, think of broadening in that space. Kind of like a spacer with braces where they're trying to expand the top and widen. So think of widening there, a feeling of widening, and that'll help you to lift that palate a bit more. So let's work on some of those rounded sounds. All right, so we're going to think about the lips rounding, but also protruding. So pushing them a bit more forward. So not just rounding, but also extending. So you'll feel a pull in the cheeks at the sides, extending and pushing those lips forward. And you're going to feel more resonance. And when I talk about that space in the back of your mouth opening, that's going to help with that. All right. So let's try the ooh, like in goose. Ooh, goose. Ooh.
Boots,
Yes. And let's try like in foot or
foot,
football
football,
or good.
good.
And then let's try O as in go.
Oh, go.
And then awe as in thought.
All, thought,
Good.
thought.
Now, some sounds are more partially rounded. They're not as fully rounded, like in bird.
Bird, bird.
Hmm. Right. It's not as rounded as those other sounds we just went through, but it is going to be slightly rounded. Or oi, like boy.
Boy.
It starts with the lip rounding and then opens up a bit more. Or aw, like lot,
All, lock.
can have a slight rounding as well. All right. So let's try the contrast between rounding and unrounded. So food,
Food,
feed,
feed.
food,
Food,
feed,
feed.
food,
Food,
feed.
feed.
And let's try foot and fit. Foot,
Foot, fit.
fit. That's
Foot.
right.
Fit.
And let's try coat,
Coat.
cat.
Cat.
Coat,
Coat.
cat.
Cat.
Nice, good. All right, let's try a longer phrase that's more like a tongue twister to work on these rounded shapes. Who knew
Who knew
the blue moon
the blue moon
grew new roots?
grew new roots?
Who knew the blue moon
Who knew the blue moon
grew new roots?
grew new roots?
Who
Who
knew
knew
the
the
blue
blue moon
moon grew
grew
new
new
roots?
roots?
Yes, good, exactly. All right, so then let's focus on the lip shape for a moment. Try saying C with that spread lip shape. It's wider and more
See,
spread. And then
see,
try Sue and feel the rounding
Sue,
of that lip shape.
see,
See,
Sue,
Sue. Nice.
see,
Good.
Sue.
Yes. All right, so then let's try the word round.
Round,
Good. And let's try oval.
oval,
Moon.
moon,
Hoop.
hoop,
Dome.
dome.
Good. Nice. All right. So then let's try moon soon.
Moon, soon.
Boot food.
Boot, food.
School goose.
School, goose.
Loose smooth.
Loose, smooth.
Tooth bloom.
Tooth, bloom.
Book look.
Book, look.
Hook cook.
Hook, hook.
Foot good.
Foot, good.
Wood wool.
Wood, wool.
Brook took.
Brook, took.
Great. All right. Blue moon.
Blue, moon.
Smooth move.
Smooth, move.
Cool room.
Cool, room.
True blue.
True, blue.
Very good. And let's try loose tooth.
Loose, tooth.
School rule.
School, rule.
New root.
New, root.
Two hoops.
Two, hoops.
Good look.
Good, look.
Wood hook.
Wood, hook.
Full moon.
Full, moon.
Footstool.
Footstool.
Brook trout.
Brook, trout.
Wool coat,
wool coat,
blue hood,
blue hood,
full scoop,
full scoop,
push, pull.
push, pull.
Great. All right, let's do some longer phrases now. The blue moon
The blue moon
rose over
rose over
the cool lagoon.
the cool lagoon. The blue moon rose over the blue lagoon.
Good. A true fool
A true fool
chooses smooth moves.
chooses smooth moves.
Good. Two loose screws
Two loose screws
ruined the new roof.
ruined the new roof.
Good. I want you to think about sending more air through those rounded vowels and extend them slightly. Think of it kind of like when we work on those unvoiced consonants and I have you linger on them a little bit longer. Same thing for these rounded shapes today. A good cook
A good cook
should look
should look
at the full cookbook.
at the full cookbook.
Nice. The wool hood
The wool hood
was pulled over
was pulled over
the wood stool.
the wood stool.
He stood in the brook.
He stood in the brook.
Right. Did you feel how stood you kind of cut off the vowel early, like stood, like you went right to the final
Stood.
consonant. So think of he stood.
He
Extend
stood.
that a bit.
Stood.
Mm-hmm.
Stood.
Yes. He stood in the brook.
He stood in the brook.
Yes. With his foot in the mud.
With his foot in the mud.
Yes, good. And then that, so when you jump right to that final consonant and cut the vowel short, it's harder to understand the word. So think of
Stood.
extending the
Stood.
vowels a bit more. That's where the voice carries. That's where it rings out. So if people are having trouble hearing you or understanding you, try powering your breath through those vowels a bit more and extending them slightly. All right?
Okay.
All right, let's try some more phrases. Joe told me to go home
Joe told me to go home
before the show.
before the show.
Great. A slow boat floated
A slow boat floated
over the open ocean.
over the open ocean.
She wrote a note
She wrote a note
about the cold stone road.
about the cold stone road.
The tall dog walked
The tall dog walked
across the broad lawn.
across the broad lawn.
He bought a small straw hat
He bought a small straw hat
at the mall.
at the mall.
I thought we'd talk
I thought we'd talk
about the long walk.
about the long walk.
Excellent. The girl heard a word
The girl heard a word
about the early work.
about the early work.
Good. Her first turn
Her first turn
on the surfboard
on the surfboard
was perfect.
was perfect.
The thirsty bird
The thirsty bird
searched for fresh water.
searched for fresh water.
The noisy boys
The noisy boys
enjoyed their toy boats.
enjoyed their toy boats.
Avoid making a choice
Avoid making a choice
without a voice in the matter.
without a choice in the matter.
Roy destroyed the oil lamp
Roy destroyed the oil lamp
in the storm.
in the storm.
Excellent. Let's add more THs to these as well. Through the smooth booth,
Through the smooth boot,
they moved with the youth.
they moved with the youth.
The truth is,
The truth is,
the goose flew south.
the goose flew south.
She threw 2 new toothbrushes
She threw 2 new toothbrushes
into the bathtub.
into the bathtub.
Into the bathtub.
Into the bathtub.
Good. Look at the good booth
Look at the good booth
near the footpath.
near the footpath.
He stood with both boots.
He stood with both boots.
Both boots.
Both boots.
Better. With both boots.
With both boots.
Better. He stood with both boots.
He stood with both boots
In the thick mud.
in the thick mud.
The wolf pushed through
The wolf pushed through
the thorny thicket.
the thorny thicket.
Good. Though the boat floats,
Though the boat floats,
the oars go slowly.
the oars go slowly.
They both chose
They both chose
to go through the old road.
to go through the old road.
Great. The throat doctor wrote a note
The rote doctor wrote a note
About the cold.
about the cold.
I thought the author
I thought the author
bought a warm cloth coat.
bought a warm cloth coat.
Yes. The tall athlete
The tall athlete
taught thoughtful theories in math class.
taught thoughtful theories in math class.
Good. On thoughtful, can we make sure we have a crisp
Thoughtful,
T? Thoughtful.
thoughtful,
Good.
thoughtful,
Thoughtful theories.
thoughtful theories.
Excellent. The north wind brought a storm
The north wind brought a storm
through the broad path.
through the broad path.
Excellent. The third girl heard
The third girl heard
the thunder through the earth.
the thunder through the earth.
Great. Her thirsty brother
Her thirsty brother
searched for the thermos.
searched for the thermos.
Good. On searched, it felt a little blurry to me. So can we make sure that the to the ch to the d is clear? Searched.
Searched.
Yes, better. Very good. It felt like the ch and the d were a little bit just slidey the first time you said it. Searched.
Searched.
Yeah, that's a lot more rhythmic and clear. Very nice. Searched for the thermos.
Searched for the thermos.
The thermos.
The thermos.
For the thermos.
For the thermos. Is it
Search.
thermos or thermos? Thermos.
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 You'll want to accent on the first syllable there. Thermos.
Got it.
Yes. Searched for the thermos.
Searched for the thermos.
Yes, much better. They turned toward.
They turned towards
The worthy cause
the worthy cause
with warmth.
with warmth.
Good. The noisy boys thought
The noisy boys thought
their voices were worth gold.
their voices were worth gold.
Avoid the oily path
Avoid the oily path
that goes through the thorns.
that goes through the thorns.
Good. That's a tricky little stretch there. That goes through the thorns.
That goes through the thorns.
Right, because that is voiced, through is unvoiced, the is voiced, thorns is unvoiced, right? So
Yeah.
that's a little bit tricky because it's back and forth with voiced and unvoiced. So let's try path that goes through the thorns.
Path that goes through the thorns.
Yes, excellent. That was great. Roy's toy was thrown.
Roy's toys was thrown
into the bath with joy.
into the bath with joy.
Yes, good. Excellent. So all of these phrases are working on those rounded shapes, but we also were adding in now those TH sounds as well. Do you feel like you're doing better with identifying which are voiced and which are unvoiced?
It is definitely more intuitive.
Good. Excellent. I know we talked about some just general rules, but unfortunately, sometimes they really don't have rules or follow rules. In English, there are a lot of exceptions. So even when you have a rule, it might not follow that rule. So that's where it can be a bit tricky. And the THs are one of those things that it really varies. So we have kind of general little tips for it, but it doesn't really have a hard and fast rule. Just kind of a generalized, usually you'll find this kind of thing, but always exceptions to every rule in English. All right, good. Let's try a few more here. The smooth path
The smooth path
leads to the booth
leads to the booth
with a large tooth.
with a large tooth.
Through the blue sky,
Through the blue sky,
the truth shines on Thursdays.
the truth shines on Thursday.
Good. Try that one again. The truth shines on Thursday.
The truth shines on Thursday.
Great. Ruth thought the school
Ruth thought the school
roof was huge compared to a thimble.
root was, sorry, what was it
That's
again?
all right. Roof was huge compared to a thimble.
Ruth was huge compared to a thimble.
Good. Look at the wooden booth
Look at the wooden booth
by the brook
by the brook
with Thelma.
with Thelma.
A good
Thelma.
tooth
A good tooth
should not feel loose.
should not feel loose.
Good. And make sure for tooth, that's an unvoiced TH. So make sure to extend it a bit longer because with it
Tooth.
being short like that, it comes out kind of like a toot. So that would be like a toot passing gas or a toot on a horn. It means something different. So make sure that
Tooth.
TH is elongated so that we realize that it's that TH sound. A good tooth.
A good tooth.
Yes, yes, extending it a bit longer. Excellent. That helps us to identify that because the T is very short and crisp and clean. So that tooth extending and having a little bit of a longer hissy sound helps us to identify it as a listener. Excellent.
Got it. Hey,
The
Vandy, quick
yes,
question.
sure.
There's no way I can access the recordings on the Zoom app, is there?
I will look into that because I think they're stored like in the Zoom cloud on my account. They just kind of start, they kick in when I open it. So I can see if I can um share that somehow because I know with like Dropbox and things like that or Google Cloud you can do that. So I will
It's
look at
just the
that.
extra step, this way I can just find it
Oh,
on
right. Yeah,
Zoom.
you can just access it from the cloud. That would be very helpful. So I
Yeah,
will look into that and check. All right.
perfect.
So reflecting on what we did today, what was maybe one thing that stood out to you as a key takeaway? Something that you thought, all right, I really want to remember this. And
Elongating the vowels,
nice.
because that is where I'm really cutting it short, and I know it because
Mm-hmm.
the words are super short, which
Right.
makes it harder for someone to understand.
Yes. And I think you're wanting to speak faster, which you definitely can speak more quickly while still elongating the vowel. So I can take a phrase like, I hugged my mom, right? And I can say it quickly, I hugged my mom. But I also can keep those vowels longer because, like I said before, that's where the energy and the air is moving through that phrase. I hugged my mom. I hugged my mom. I hugged my mom. The consonants I usually make a little bit shorter unless it's something like those unvoiced consonants, like the full moon, that F I need to extend slightly so that it's heard more clearly, or that unvoiced TH so that people pick that up a bit more. So when I have certain consonants, I might extend a little bit longer. But generally, as a general rule, I want to think of shortening the consonants and elongating the vowels because some consonants are going to cut off the airflow as well, like a D, a P, a B. They're going to briefly stop the airflow. And when the air isn't flowing, we're not making sound. So think of, as a general rule, shortening the consonants, elongating the vowels, and try not to. So, what was happening was you were closing to the final consonant early. Someone, and just like closing quick. And what's happening there is it becomes muted and muffled, and then your listener has trouble hearing what you're saying. Um, so just keep that in mind as a general rule to think of extending, elongating the vowel. And then what about your THs? What was something you maybe felt today or noticed? What was maybe feeling like it was working well with those?
Most of them were intuitive, except when you threw like three or four together,
Right.
and then it became a little harder.
And these are exercises. So sometimes these combinations are definitely not things you're going to run into often, but that challenge, right? It's that coordination so that when you run into a really tricky phrase, you're ready, you're prepared for it. So, so definitely in your everyday life, typically you're not going to have that many THs back to back to back to back. But if I had Thelma thinks that Thurman needs a new thermos, that could happen, right?
Yep,
it doesn't happen often, but occasionally it does. So we want to make sure that we're throwing those tricky combinations at you in the practice so that when you encounter it in life, you're like, I got that. But yes, it is tricky when you have a bunch back to back like that because you do have to right now at this point really think about those shapes and sounds. But at some point, the ideal is that it becomes part of your muscular habit. And so that's what we're working towards, is that the muscles just know where to go and how to shape and how to send the air. So that's something that we're developing, which is great. And you definitely are moving more quickly through these exercises now, which is great. That's really excellent to hear. So it's definitely working. The practice is paying off.
perfect.
All right. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you Thursday.
See you Thursday.
Bye,
Bye.
Robin.